On a hotel escalator, an elderly woman, clad in a wedding gown, faces imminent peril, clutching a crimson diary. Amidst her final breaths, memories flood her mind, recalling the cherished day of her wedding at this very venue. Meanwhile, Carlos returns home to find his brother Oliver in a state of distress. Attempting to ease Oliver's angst, Carlos shares news of their mother's financial assistance, yet fails to soothe him. Before Oliver can articulate his turmoil, Detective Marco barges in, disrupting their peace. Caught off guard, Carlos protests their innocence, but Marco coerces a confession from Oliver. With no arrest warrant, Marco resorts to force, inciting a frantic struggle. Amidst chaos, a stray bullet finds Carlos's leg, leaving him wounded and helpless. As the trio grapples with the aftermath, distant echoes of an explosion pierce the air. With Carlos in critical condition, Oliver improvises a makeshift bandage. Tensions escalate as Oliver seeks retribution, but Marco's threats silence him. Desperate for medical aid, Oliver suggests a hospital, but Marco insists on police intervention. Oliver aids Carlos in walking as the trio descends the stairs. Marco, perplexed, discovers loose hairs on his clothes of unknown origin. Approaching a locked door, they press onward, but find themselves trapped in a repetitive cycle, making no progress despite their efforts. With no end in sight, Marco urges the brothers to stay put as he races downstairs, attempting each locked door to no avail. Despite his efforts, he encounters Carlos and Oliver once more, seemingly appearing from above. Carlos questions his perception amidst the pain, while Marco, in a state of disbelief, retraces the stairs. Meanwhile, Oliver attempts the locked door again without success. Marco, upon returning, conducts an experiment, tossing his keys down the stairwell, only to see them return from above, defying logic. Marco, with gun in hand, interrogates the brothers, suspecting illicit involvement. They protest, claiming entrapment in the mysterious loop. Oliver's attempts to call for help prove futile due to lack of signal. Despite Carlos's agony, he refuses Oliver's offer to extract the bullet, fearing complications. Desperate for sustenance, Marco smashes a vending machine for water, with Oliver improvising a makeshift bandage. Hours pass, their predicament unchanged. In a moment of frustration, Marco discovers an unfamiliar card in his wallet, tearing it apart in confusion. Seeking solace in drugs, he offers uppers to Carlos to numb the pain temporarily. As Carlos slips into unconsciousness, Marco and Oliver find solace in conversation, sharing food from the vending machine. Marco reveals a poignant family photo, lamenting his missed 15th anniversary with his wife. Oliver's response is a threat, his emotions strained. Desperate for solutions, Oliver rummages through his bag to little avail. The following day, Carlos awakens, but his condition remains dire. In his final moments, he imparts a poignant message to Oliver, urging him to embrace life. Carlos passes away in Oliver's embrace, leaving behind a grieving brother and a bewildered Marco. Discovering the vending machine restocked, Marco spirals into panic over their unending plight. A distraught Oliver, consumed by grief and frustration, nearly turns violent, but Marco's calming words prevent tragedy. Meanwhile, in the tranquility of a countryside home, Daniel assists his sister Camilla in a card trick as their family prepares for a road trip. Sandra, their mother, reminds them to pack essentials, including Camilla's spare inhaler, for the journey to visit their biological father. Before their departure, they receive a call from the children's father, leaving Sandra furious as she vehemently assures him that Roberto has been sober for 5 years and will drive perfectly soberly. Finally, the family sets off, and during the journey, Roberto stumbles upon a random piece of bamboo, which he promptly tosses out of the window. Eventually, they make a stop at a gas station where Roberto, disregarding Camilla's sugar allergy, gives her a sip of juice. She then heads to the restroom, but not before entrusting her inhaler to Roberto for safekeeping. Soon after, Sandra learns of the incident and berates Roberto, calling him careless. As the group gets back into the car, mere minutes later, Camilla begins to suffer an asthma attack. Sandra and Roberto exit the car to check on her, and in a moment of misfortune, Roberto accidentally drops and steps on Camilla's inhaler, instantly rendering it unusable. To compound matters, Daniel had forgotten to bring the spare. The family decides to turn back for another inhaler, but as they get back in the car, they are startled by a distant explosion. Returning to the gas station, they find it deserted, prompting Sandra to hastily grab allergy medicine for Camilla without payment. Continuing their journey, Daniel spots the familiar road sign once more, triggering Sandra to berate Roberto for his perceived shortcomings. Despite Daniel's attempts to intervene, the argument escalates, leaving him to console his sister. As they drive on, they come across another gas station, which Roberto insists is identical to the previous one. Finding no one there, they are forced to press forward. Minutes later, they encounter the same road sign yet again, leading them to stop the car as Roberto adamantly insists on the repetition of the road. Daniel, distrustful of Roberto, attempts to leave, but Roberto forcibly returns him to the car. Sandra, driven by desperation to aid Camilla, insists on persisting despite the eerie repetition of the road signs and gas stations. Despite the sun still shining, both the car's clock and Roberto's watch display a late hour. As Camilla's condition worsens, Sandra is overwhelmed with anguish, her cries blending with the sound of the passing scenery. After countless repetitions of the same signs, Camilla loses consciousness, deepening Sandra's despair. Roberto, finally acknowledging the futility of their situation, halts the car and suggests exploring a different direction. With a glimmer of hope, he ventures into the field on the right, seeking a path away from the endless loop. As Camilla's condition deteriorates, Sandra's anguish becomes unbearable, compelling her to flee with her children despite Daniel's warnings. Lost in a state of disbelief, she convinces herself that she must be trapped in a nightmare, desperately yearning to awaken from it. Stopping the car to succumb to her overwhelming emotions, Sandra remains oblivious as Daniel emerges from the vehicle with Camilla in his arms. Unaware of her children's absence, Sandra continues onward, her mind consumed by turmoil. Daniel, burdened with the responsibility of caring for his sister, retraces their steps back to the familiar road sign, where he watches Sandra pass through the loop once more. Alone and filled with despair, Sandra seeks solace in the confines of the gas station, hiding away as tears flow freely in the face of her shattered hope. Returning to Daniel's perspective, he sadly witnesses Camilla's passing, unable to do anything to save her. Roberto reappears from the field on the left, confirming their grim realization that every area they encounter is trapped within the loop. As time ticks by, 35 years elapse, leaving both men stranded on the endless stairs. Marco, now elderly and frail, struggles to navigate the steps, while Oliver, in his middle age, maintains his vitality by engaging in various activities. With the vending machine and bag resetting daily, Oliver ingeniously utilizes the duplicated items to create a makeshift living space on the stairs, including a shower made of water bottles. With meticulous routine, Oliver maintains his hygiene and health, even fashioning a nail clipper from his belongings for grooming. In contrast, Marco's side remains cluttered and disorganized, relying on Oliver's assistance for basic needs, like personal hygiene. As the years pass, it becomes evident that both men have succumbed to madness, their once sharp minds now dulled by the endless monotony of the loop. In a ritualistic gesture, Oliver reverently prays to Carlos's skeletal remains whenever the bag resets, occasionally inviting Marco to join him in the solemn practice, their faces obscured by paper bags as they recite a makeshift prayer. The walls of their confined space are adorned with countless scribbles, serving as a visual testament to the passage of time and a repository for the duo's increasingly erratic thoughts. Marco's mind fixates on preserving memories, meticulously tracking the passing days and obsessively calculating their ages, including his own, Oliver's, and even his daughter's, who have likely reached adulthood in the intervening years. Before retiring to their restless sleep, Marco diligently repeats his own name, a desperate attempt to cling to his fleeting sense of identity amidst the overwhelming madness of their endless confinement. As the old lady's journey on the hotel escalator draws to a close, she peacefully passes away, her hamster finding a new caretaker in the passing stranger's hands. Meanwhile, 35 years have slipped by for the stranded family on the endless road. In a curious cycle, the gas station replenishes its supplies, sustaining Roberto, now aged and living in squalor within the parked car adjacent to the familiar road sign. Sandra, also weathered by time, has become withdrawn and unresponsive, yet Roberto persists in his caretaking duties, albeit in a manner devoid of dignity. In contrast, an adult Daniel has carved out a semblance of a life amidst the fields, accompanied by his steadfast hamster companion. Utilizing resources from the replenishing gas station, he has fashioned a modest camp, complete with provisions for survival and a trove of cherished drawings, bearing witness to the passage of time and the resilience of the human spirit. With each reset, Daniel finds an unbroken inhaler, a bitter reminder of their perpetual predicament, which he angrily discards into a growing pile. Seeking solace in routine, he occupies himself by listening to his Walkman, embracing nature during solitary walks, and engaging in card games with his trusty hamster companion. One fateful afternoon, Roberto stumbles upon Camilla's plushie abandoned on the road and leaves it near Daniel's camp. Touched by the gesture, Daniel seeks out Roberto, who reminisces about Sandra and notices Daniel's lack of recollection. However, Daniel's obliviousness doesn't surprise Roberto, for Sandra too has succumbed to the amnesic effects of their interminable ordeal. Roberto is plagued by a nagging feeling that he has something crucial to impart to Daniel, yet the details elude him. Suddenly he mutters, "That's how old people are," echoing Marco's simultaneous outburst at 3 in the morning. Startled, Oliver rushes to Marco's side, only to witness his startling revelation. Marco claims to have recalled the long-lost message, a revelation that heralds his impending demise. In a moment of profound clarity, Marco, or rather Daniel, discloses the truth. Their memories are but fragments of an alternate reality, distorted by the endless loop they find themselves trapped in. It was Daniel who set the loop in motion by ending Carlos's life. And now, the realization of his identity signals the beginning of their liberation from the confines of their twisted existence. Back on the desolate road, Sandra's journey comes to an end as she peacefully passes away, joining Camilla in eternal rest. Daniel watches through tear-filled eyes as Roberto solemnly lays Sandra to rest beside her beloved daughter. In a poignant moment of reflection, Roberto shares with Daniel that Sandra ceased speaking nearly 20 years prior, coinciding with Daniel's departure to live a solitary existence. Despite the sorrow of their loss, Roberto sees Sandra's passing as a release from the endless torment of their predicament, believing she has found peace at last. In a sudden onset of excruciating pain, both Roberto and Marco are overcome by debilitating headaches, causing them to writhe in agony. Amidst their suffering, they proclaim a newfound clarity of vision, a harbinger of their impending demise. They solemnly affirm that none of their experiences are real. Rather, they exist within the confines of an alternate reality. Roberto and Marco confess to Daniel and Oliver that their actions triggered the inception of the endless loop. They caution them against repeating the same mistake, lest they perpetuate the cycle of torment. Urging them to inscribe their names to memory, Roberto and Marco share the wisdom they themselves neglected to heed, emphasizing the importance of retaining one's identity amidst the maelstrom of confusion. With their final breaths, Roberto and Marco impart this crucial advice to Daniel and Oliver, their voices fading into the ether as they slip away, leaving behind a legacy of hard-learned lessons in the face of unfathomable circumstances. Roberto imparts a haunting prophecy to Daniel, cautioning him that upon encountering a police car, his identity will fade into oblivion. Similarly, Marco shares with Oliver a chilling premonition tied to an elevator, an ominous harbinger of his own impending memory loss. As the revelations unfold, Roberto discloses his true name, Ruben, unveiling a buried chapter of his past. Recounting a tragic childhood event, he recounts how, at the tender age of 10, he found himself stranded on a bamboo raft with a classmate and a teacher. In a heart-wrenching turn of events, a mishap led to the death of his classmate, who bled for 3 agonizing days before succumbing to his injuries. Left adrift for 35 years with his teacher, Roberto's life became a tale of isolation and unending sorrow, a haunting testament to the enduring weight of past mistakes. In a poignant revelation, Roberto recounts how, in the twilight of his teacher's life, the educator experienced a moment of clarity, echoing the same tale now shared by Roberto. Like Roberto, the teacher had been ensnared in a 35-year loop, his existence tethered to an infinite train track. As death's embrace drew near, the teacher imparted this grim truth to Roberto, planting the seeds of understanding that now blossom in his retelling. With the teacher's passing, Roberto found himself liberated from the endless cycle, returning to solid ground to forge a new path. Here, he encountered Sandra and the children, embarking on a fresh chapter of his life, though his memories remained shrouded until this moment of revelation. Meanwhile, Marco's tale mirrors Roberto's in its essence. Formerly known as Daniel, Marco reveals how Roberto, in his past incarnation as Daniel, had warned him against entering a police car. Ignoring this advice, Marco embraced a new identity, devoid of recollection from his previous existence. Through these intertwined narratives, Roberto and Marco unveil the intricate tapestry of their shared experiences, woven with threads of loss, redemption, and the indomitable spirit of human resilience. Both Roberto and Marco fervently assert the illusory nature of their current existence, viewing it as a purgatorial realm of emotional torment. In their conviction, they perceive themselves as mere conduits, channeling their physical and emotional energies to sustain their real selves, leading fulfilling lives elsewhere. They liken themselves to the machinations that propel the machinery of reality, their actions influencing the well-being of their true selves. They posit that the triggering of the incident necessitates a sacrifice, a symbolic passage from one realm to another, allowing them to fulfill their roles as guardians of their alternate realities. This explains why younger individuals weather the 35-year ordeal with greater resilience, their subconscious dedication sustaining their real selves, who are yet to fully embrace the fruits of life. Conversely, the elderly are burdened by the weight of the past, their inability to fully immerse themselves in the present, hindering their ability to contribute to the well-being of their real selves. Thus, they perceive themselves as trapped in a perpetual cycle of stagnation, unable to break free from the shackles of their own memories. In their final moments, Roberto and Marco bequeath to Oliver and Daniel a cherished memento, a little red diary brimming with snapshots and reflections of their lives. Touched by this heartfelt gesture, Oliver resolves to resume his daily routine, finding solace in the familiar rhythms of existence. Meanwhile, Daniel chooses to honor Roberto's memory in a poignant act of tribute, laying him to rest alongside his beloved family. With a heavy heart, he bids farewell to the makeshift campsite that served as their sanctuary, setting ablaze the remnants of their shared past. Yet, as Daniel ventures back to the road, a disquieting sight awaits him: a police car, an anomaly in the desolate landscape. After confirming its emptiness, he retraces his steps to gather his belongings, including his faithful hamster, before bidding a silent farewell to the remnants of his former life. However, in a cruel twist of fate, as Daniel reaches out to touch the car, his memories evaporate like morning mist, leaving him disoriented and bereft of his newfound clarity. In a moment of profound loss, he inadvertently drops his beloved hamster before driving away, his mind a blank slate, destined to wander the labyrinth of existence once more. With the discovery of a police uniform nestled within the confines of the car, Daniel embarks on a transformative journey to the city. Shedding his past identity, he shears away the remnants of his former self, adopting the mantle of Detective Marco, and unwittingly catalyzing a fresh iteration of the looping cycle by extinguishing the life of Carlos. Meanwhile, Oliver grapples with the unwelcome appearance of an elevator door adjacent to the endless stairwell, a harbinger of his unraveling sanity. Despite his valiant efforts to resist the encroaching madness, Oliver finds himself teetering on the precipice of despair, contemplating drastic measures to escape the unyielding grip of the loop. Desperation leads Oliver to entertain thoughts of self-annihilation, yet he finds himself paralyzed by indecision. As his prayers go unanswered and his resolve wavers, Oliver is compelled to confront the enigmatic elevator, its beckoning doors promising a semblance of salvation. Stepping into the unknown abyss, Oliver emerges on the other side transformed, assuming the guise of Carl, a humble bellhop within the confines of the hotel. Amidst the bustling corridors of the establishment, Oliver encounters a married couple whose brazen displays of affection test the bounds of his professionalism. However, as the couple departs, leaving in their wake a lingering sense of unease, Oliver orchestrates a subtle yet fateful intervention, releasing a bee whose sting sets in motion a cascade of unforeseen events. The ensuing chaos, punctuated by a distant explosion, heralds the inception of yet another iteration of the inexorable loop, ensnaring Oliver and his newfound companions in a cycle of eternal recurrence.